Amanda's here. Usma's here. Hannah was here. I don't know what happened. Mandy is here. Erica's here and Evelyn. Okay, good. Okay, so we actually don't have that much content left in the course. You know, the way I feel is that, in other words, we don't have to rush, which is a good feeling. So I wanted to let you know that I did edit the assignment, the brief self-reflection. So I took out the writing in red where it talks about that we're going to do this in class. No, this is an at-home assignment. And in that assignment, I made reference to topics that you could pull from. So what I did was I added those topics on that same document. So I think the document is 2 or 3 pages long. Anyway, on the last page is the bullet pointed list of topics that you can pull from. You don't have to use that list. And of course, you should not use the whole list. Whatever you think might be relevant for you, you can pull from that. Okay, but beyond that, if you want to peruse PowerPoints or readings and you feel there's something that I didn't include that would be pertinent for you, please include it. Hannah is here. Okay, good. Hannah, I saw you come on early on and I said, where's Hannah? So
I know my computer just froze and I couldn't.
Oh, I hate when that happens.
Yeah.
Okay. Are there any questions before I start?
So you just placed the topics for this current paper that's coming up within the same section, right?
Yes. So when you look in that folder, there should only be one document. You can check it to make sure.
All right, thank you. Because I was looking at it the other day and I noticed that I had to go back to like assignment number 2.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I just did it 30 minutes ago.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And I know you all have posted assignments that I still have to grade, and I'll be doing that on Friday. Okay. So today, I'm going to apologize in advance. I'm going to be showing a few videos, and I hope you don't get bored. But in order to demonstrate some points, I think it's important. So this PowerPoint is, I don't want to say it's a hodgepodge, but it includes more than one topic. And I'm not sure how far we'll get, but like I say, we're fine with time. So we're talking about language learning empowerment, first versus second language learning. We're going to have a group graded activity, and I will let you know the date of that, but you'll be able to use some of this information for that. I'll actually do the same thing with that assignment. I'll probably make bullet points, especially since your time will be limited since that's an in-class. So the brief self-reflection is coming up. The annotated bibliography on the 24th, and the literature review on the 9th. So I am eliminating the empowerment assignment. I just thought it was too much. So this is what is left. Any questions? Okay. So language hierarchy. We talked about this in the beginning of the course. There's actually a pyramid well, there's more than one version, but each tell us like that there are certain languages that are more valued than others. Um, and we have, as students, as scholars, we have to ask ourselves, why is that? You know, why are some languages valued a whole lot more than others? Not just in this country, but across the world. So this is one version of the language hierarchy. And this tells us that big languages, English and French, are the most valued. But how are we defining big? I know in this country, French is not a popular language. But English and French do seem to be valued the most. And then come regional languages, languages of the UN, Arabic, French also, Chinese, German, Spanish, English, and Russian. And then national languages. So notice under regional languages, there are quite a few languages that are not included, right? Quite a few regional languages. For instance, Swahili is a regional language, but we're not including anything from the continent of Africa. And we're not including anything from any other Asian countries. It's just interesting. Then we have national languages, around 80 languages serve over 180 nation states. And we have official languages within nation states and other, quote, safe languages. Those are around 600 languages worldwide. Okay, many of them we have not heard of, but many of them are regional too, but less valued. Then, which is very interesting, this purple row at the bottom, these are local vernacular languages, okay? Lots and lots of them, 6,000 of them. The word vernacular itself is controversial. Could someone look up the word vernacular for us? Does anyone volunteer to look up the word vernacular?
It means the language or dialect spoken by the ordinary people in a particular country or region.
Thank you, Usma. As scholars, we understand the importance of operationalizing these concepts, right? So, ordinary people, what does that mean? We're not going to answer that now necessarily, but it's something definitely to think about. By the way, and we'll do this in the coming weeks, there's something that used to be called African American Vernacular English. Now they call it African American English because vernacular is has certain connotations that put you at the bottom. So linguists kind of question the use of the word vernacular in the first place. Okay. So here are the languages that people would most like to learn. And this was in 2018. This is interesting. It makes sense that Spanish is so high. So many people speak it. To know Spanish means that you're more marketable. But what's interesting is Italian comes before Mandarin Chinese. I wonder why that is. Mandarin Chinese is spoken by many, many more people. So what do you think of the order of these? What do you think? Does anything surprise you?
I think Spanish, it makes sense that people will want to learn Spanish because there's so many Spanish speaking countries.
Yes.
So you can communicate with, if you plan to visit those places, you can communicate with people. And then, and then French, I know that it's like a very, like, people say it as a romantic language, or So they
Mhm.
want to learn that too.
And that's interesting that the three favorites are all Romance languages. They're all in the same family. Although Portuguese is a Romance language, but it's not as sought after. So, we don't know just from this chart. Maybe it's something about the way the people sound. I know that when I hear Italian, I'm drawn to it, but I'm also drawn to Portuguese. Okay. Um, I think that people might have the perception that Mandarin is too hard to learn, and maybe that's why it's so low. But I would think, I would guess before seeing this chart that Mandarin would be second and Arabic would be third, and that they would be both very high percentages. But again, there are some languages that are favorited for various reasons that may not be practical, but maybe something else. Okay. How many of you have seen My Fair Lady? Let me come out of this. Who has seen My Fair Lady before? Either the play or the movie?
I have not seen it.
No? Oh gosh. Well, maybe because it's so old and you guys are so young. At some point, I would love to play the whole movie. If we have time before the end of the semester, I'd like to play the whole movie. But here is a piece from, this is just a very short snippet from My Fair Lady. So the premise of My Fair Lady is that Higgins, who's the gentleman you will see in the video clip, he's a linguist. This all takes place in England. And the woman you see is someone from a lower class. She speaks a different brand of English. Some people would call it vernacular, some people would call it dialect. But I just want you to put on your teacher's lens, because there are actually some teachers still out there who really embrace a hierarchy, especially about dialect, but even about language. For instance, if someone enters their class and is speaking Italian, the teacher may fawn over that student above the students who are speaking Spanish or Arabic, just because that is an idealized language. And also, they may value students who speak standard English over different variations of English. So that's what you're about to see. And his techniques, the linguist techniques, they look very unconventional, but it's not that long ago that his techniques and his thoughts were not seen as unconventional. So let me stop talking and okay. I think we will have time before the end of the semester to see the whole thing, but this is a short snippet. So he is taking her under his wings to try to change her, and uses all means necessary so that she can be accepted into society more readily.
All right, Eliza, say it again.
Wait, let me turn it up. Sorry. Ah.
All right, Eliza, say it again.
The rain in Spain stays mainly in the plain.
The rain in Spain stays mainly in the plain.
Didn't I say that?
No, Eliza, you didn't say that. You didn't even say that. every night before you get into bed, where you used to say your prayers, I want you to say, the rain in Spain stays mainly in the plain 50 times. You get much further with the Lord if you learn not to offend his ears. Now for your H's. Pickering, this is going to be ghastly.
Control yourself, Higgins. Give the girl a chance.
Oh, well, I suppose we can't expect you to get it right the first time. Now, come here, Eliza, and watch closely. Now, you see that flame? Every time you pronounce the letter H correctly, the flame will waver, and every time you drop your H, the flame will remain stationary. That's how you'll know if you've done it correctly. In time, your ear will hear the difference. See it better in the mirror. Now, listen carefully. In Hertford, Hereford, and Hampshire, hurricanes hardly ever happen. Now, repeat that after me. In Hertford, Hereford, and Hampshire, hurricanes hardly ever happen.
In Hertford, Hereford, and Hampshire, hurricanes hardly ever happen.
Oh, no, 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 no. Have you no ear at all?
Shall I do it over?
No, please. Start from the very beginning. Just do this. Go, ha, 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 ha.
Ha, 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 ha.
Go on, go on, go on.
Ha, ha, ha.
Does the same thing hold true in India? Pickering is peculiar habit of not only dropping a letter like the letter H, but using where it doesn't belong, like hever instead of ever. Notice that Slavs, when they learn English, have a tendency to do it with their G's. They say linger instead of linger. And they turn right round and say singer instead of singer. Notice the Slavs, when using it where it isn't needed. They learn English, they have to do it with their G. The girl, Higgins. Go on, go on, go on, go on.
Poor Professor Higgins. Poor Professor Higgins. Night and day he slays away. Oh, poor Professor Higgins. All day long on his feet, up and down until he's numb. Doesn't rest, doesn't eat, doesn't touch a crumb.
Again, Liza. How kind of you to let me come.
How kind of you to let me come.
No, kind of you, kind of you, kind. How kind of you to let me come.
How kind of you to let me
No,
come.
no, kind of you, kind of you. It's like cup of tea, kind of you. Cup of tea. Say cup of tea.
Cup of tea.
No, no, a cup of tea. An awfully good cake, this. I wonder where Mrs. Pierce gets it.
First rate. And those strawberry tarts are delicious. Did you try the plain cake?
Try it again.
Did you try the...
Pickering! Again, Eliza.
Cup of tea.
Oh, no. Can't you hear the difference? Look, put your tongue forward until it squeezes on the top of your lower teeth. And then say cup.
Cup
Then say of.
of.
Then say cup, 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 of, cup, 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 cup,
of, cup, cup, cup. Of.
By Jove, Higgins, that was a glorious tea. Why don't you finish that last strawberry tart? I couldn't eat another thing.
Oh, I couldn't touch it.
Shame to waste it.
Oh, it won't be wasted. I know somebody who's immensely fond of strawberry tarts. Cheep, 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 cheep.
Ow!
Okay. What did we just watch? Any comments about his approach, how she's portrayed, or anything else?
His methods to teach her how to pronounce words were very interesting, like blowing, like to make the flame go up to pronounce the H sound.
Creative. That was creative. What do you think about him as a teacher?
I feel like he did get it, like her to talk the way that he wanted her to, even though like she said, like Evelyn said, like his methods are a little extreme.
Yeah, it's very unorthodox. Yeah, at times, towards the end, she was making she was blowing the flame up. So a little bit of it worked. What else? Anything else?
I think she was portrayed as like she didn't know how to speak. Like he didn't really encourage her. He just like, no, you're not pronouncing it right. And then he would say, I think she was from India because he did mention that in the video.
Oh no. She was from England, but he was comparing her speech to people from India. Yeah.
So he was really just making negative comments about the way she spoke.
He was very negative, and I agree. At times he was very impatient. And once we watch the movie, you'll see he's very classist. So the language goes along with other things that are cultural. And people have ideas about the station folks should be in life based on the way they speak. So she's very poor, and he found her selling flowers on the street. And the movie takes us through this journey of him trying to transform her. Language is one thing, but you'll see some other aspects of kind of this prejudice against her class. And the UK is known for that. If you speak in a certain way, they probably know, that your family, no one in your family has probably ever gotten a college degree. And that's your station in life. Like that's where you'll be. Not much upward mobility. Kind of like a little bit of a caste system. At some point, I want to show you a video of a young man who he's remarkable. He's in the UK and he's very young, I'd say 21, and he can do every single UK accent that exists without even thinking, from the very lowest class to the highest in different regions of the country. But I wrote down something that he said. He said, you get much further with the Lord if you don't offend his ears. And that was the thought, like even throughout much of the 1900s, was that like if you did not speak the King's English, if you did not speak standard English, the idea was that you were probably unethical, that you probably couldn't be trusted, and that you probably were not bright. People even used to think that you might have something wrong with you physiologically. So here we are kind of dealing with all of this history as we go into the classroom and become teachers, sometimes to people who don't speak English at all, and sometimes for people who don't speak standard English at all. So we just have to remember not to have a hierarchy ourselves. Let's see if I can pull this PowerPoint back up. Okay, so we want to think about the fact that writing and speaking are very different, and they should be. English, ESL used to be taught, maybe even 4 decades ago, as reading and writing, and you speak the way you learn to write. That's the way it was. But we know, and not even then, did people speak the way they write. So I want you to think about if someone whom you don't know reads a short letter from you, how much more would they know about you if they could see you in person and hear you speak? Not even see you in person necessarily, but hear you speak. What additional information might they know about you? Or what things might they assume about you? Any thoughts about that?
Well, they can look at how you write, like grammar, like vocabulary words that you use. So they could tell like what's your age. Well, they can assume what's your age and like the type of education you had.
Yeah. When people read your writing, they can make assumptions about your education level. Do you think they can make assumptions more or less than if they heard you speak? Do you think people make more assumptions from the way you speak or from your writing? What do you think?
I think from the way you speak, because then they can see like your little mannerisms, how deep or how like soft your voice is, if you talk loud or soft.
So they can tell something about your personality.
Yes.
And they can read your paralinguistics. So paralinguistics are the things that you do that go along with your speech. So your facial expressions, your gestures, and sometimes those are very cultural. Sometimes they're not. So that's just something important to know or to remember when we think about people speaking in different languages, in English when it's not their first language, and in different dialects. So the approach of the sociolinguist and the linguist in general is descriptive, not prescriptive. Not saying that you're going to become a linguist, but sociolinguists suggest that teachers not make judgments about the way people speak, only to model for them, right? Because sometimes when you're too prescriptive, when you scold people about the way they speak, what happens, especially students, what happens when you scold the student about the way they speak midstream when they're speaking? How do you think that student feels?
They might feel offended.
Yeah, they might feel offended. And if they're not fluent in English, they may feel less likely to speak up next time, right? So that goes to the issue of correction. And I think I have that on this PowerPoint. There are many different ways to correct a student, and some are more useful and productive than others. Some are more kind and gentle than others. And so we want to think about the ways that correction can be more empowering. Okay. I know back in my day, back in the 70s, when a teacher, especially like in a standard public school, would correct the child, they would do it publicly, and they would do it kind of like punitively, kind of like wagging their finger, or even if they're not wagging their finger, they make the correction in public with a frown on their face, right? When my grandfather and all his siblings got to New York City from Panama, I might have told you guys this, but they were enrolled in New York City public schools and they were punished for speaking Spanish. You know, so any kind of punitive approach that's linked to language use is not going to have a positive outcome. That is for sure. Okay, so the fact that sociolinguists and linguists are descriptive, they want to describe the way people think, and they're not prescriptive, they don't want to tell people how to speak, it doesn't mean that they're naive at all, right? But it does mean that sociolinguists and linguists in general never rank languages or dialects the way we see in the language hierarchy pyramid that I showed you earlier in class. Okay, I'm going to pull up this document and we're going to go over some of the ways in which we can correct English language learners. Oh, my radiator is so loud. I'm sorry. Can you hear that?
Yeah, I can hear it.
It's ridiculous. Okay, let's see.
It sounds like someone's banging.
Yes, it does. This is the way it sounds every day. But I'm not aware of it unless someone else can hear it because I'm so used to it. It's just ridiculous. What am I looking for? The correction, the error correction. Let me see. Give me a second. I don't know why I am not seeing it. I think I know. Oh, here it is. Oh, here it is. Okay, I hope this works. Okay, here it is. Sorry for that delay. Okay, so this is a longer article that's actually in the folder for this week. So you can access it if you need to when you do the group assignment that's coming up. So this lists the type of corrective feedback that teachers give. So the 6 different types of feedback that Leister and Rant in 1997 identified were used to categorize teachers' feedback in the current study. Definitions of the 6 types of feedback in this study precisely followed the ones in the Leister and Ranta study. The following explains each feedback type along with examples from the actual data collected in the present study. So this is not something that's just dreamed up. They researched teachers to see what kinds of the ways in which they provided feedback or correction, I should say. So first is something called explicit correction. This refers to the explicit provision of the correct form. As the teacher provides the correct form, he or she clearly indicates that what the student had said was incorrect. Okay, so this is probably the least creative way to correct. However, this way to correct may be necessary for beginners, but it's all in the way it's done, okay? On occasion, the wrong form is identified along with providing a correct form in the teacher's turn. So the student says, so we write Pacific. So instead of saying Pacific, the student says Pacific, like it's an SH. So the error was phonological. The teacher says Pacific, not Pacific. Okay, that's called explicit correction. The teacher is telling you where you went wrong and what you need to do to change it. Okay. Here, the second one is also phonological error. The student says smoking should be banned. This is very common. Many newcomers to English use the past tense ed in the same way with every single word. You probably learned in 340 that there's 3 different ways to use the past tense phonologically. So again, the student says smoking should be banned in all bars and restaurants. The teacher says, yeah, the word banned, the word banned, you say banned, okay? So the next type of correction is called a recast. A recast. These involves the teacher's reformulation of all or part of the student's utterance, minus the error. They are generally implicit as opposed to explicit, in that they are not introduced by phrases such as you mean and you should say. So recasts do not involve those phrases. That is, the teacher would not indicate nor point out that the student made an error, but merely give a correct form. For instance, okay, this is a grammatical mistake that the student is making. The student says, you should go see doctor. And the teacher says, the doctor, right? So the teacher doesn't say, you don't mean doctor, you mean the doctor. You see, there's not that explicit correction. Here's another example. Okay, this is phonological. The student says, in the middle is good. Neutral, I think. And the teacher says, oh, neutral. Okay, so that's just recasting it back to them in the correct form, but not being punitive. Okay, number 3 is clarification requests. These are either in the form of a question, such as pardon and I'm sorry, or attempts to reveal the intended form of the error with the rising tone. This type of corrective feedback is used when there are linguistic problems in the learner's turn, and also when the learner's utterance is not comprehensible. Unlike explicit correction or recast, clarification requests can refer to problems in comprehensibility. So in some ways, it puts the fault on both parties in a way. So the student says, I don't know the result. Well, the student mispronounces the word result. Let's just say that the student says result of something. And the teacher says, what did you say? Right, so the teacher is asking for clarification. So this allows, in some ways, this allows the student to save face, right? It's less embarrassing. And in this other example, the student says, he sack. So it says that's a phonological error, but it's also a grammatical error. But the teacher's correcting the phonological error, and the teacher says sick, right? Asking for clarification. Okay, so those are 3 levels of error, error correction. Let me mark who just came in. I think 2 people came in.
I just came in.
Okay, Aya came in.
Yeah, me too.
And who said me too?
Aya.
Oh, okay, Aya. And did someone else come in?
Clarissa.
Oh, okay, that's right. Okay, Clarissa. Okay, good to see you, even though I can't see you. Okay, so then we have 3 more, right? Number 4 is metalinguistic feedback. Okay, this is a higher level of correction. This contains either comments, information, or questions related to the well-formedness of the student's utterance without explicitly providing the correct form. So this is how you know that this is for a higher level student, because you're prompting them with the knowledge that they have the information, but they didn't use it correctly, right? It points to the nature of the error, but attempts to elicit the information from the student. This kind of corrective feedback makes the learner analyze his or her utterance linguistically. That's why it's called metalinguistic, because the student, him or herself, is analyzing his own linguistic speech. Okay. So this is a grammatical error. The student says, she without. The teacher says, without, what is the verb? Okay. So the teacher's trying to point out that there's a verb missing. And the student is supposed to reflect on the grammatical knowledge that that person has learned in class and use it. Okay. Next, we have elicitation. This refers to the techniques that teachers use to directly elicit the correct form from the student. One technique is that teachers elicit completion of their own utterance by strategically pausing. This is very common, and I must admit, I did this with my kids a lot. Strategically pausing to allow students to fill in the blank, as it were. The other technique is that teachers use questions to elicit correct forms. Either way, teachers do not provide the correct forms when it's their turn. So the student mispronounces the word life and instead says lipe. Because I enjoy city life, right? The teacher says city, right? Hoping that the student will fill in the correct phonological form of life, okay? And as I go over these, I want you to think about which ones you think are the most empowering. This is up for debate completely. The last one is repetition. This refers to the teacher's repetition in isolation of the student's erroneous utterance. In most cases, teachers adjust their intonation so as to highlight the error. Okay. So the student says, when I don't understand what kuden is in Japan, instead of saying garden. So this was a phonological error. And the teacher says kuden, right? So this is repetition, but this is kind of similar to another one. In a way, it's similar to clarification requests. But I'm going to just, if you want to read this whole article, it's really interesting. It tells you actually what happens after the recommendation is made or the correction is made. So this section is called uptake types. I'm not going to go over that today, but what are your thoughts? I'm going to just quickly scroll through. We have explicit correction. We have recasts. We have clarification requests. We have metalinguistic feedback. We have elicitation. Okay, that's when you pause and wait for the student to give you the correct form. There's repetition, okay, where you repeat the mistake back, and that should be a signal to them. So what do you think? All of these have a place, but like if you were to use one type of error correction in the course of a day as a teacher, which one do you think you'd pick? Even though that's not a realistic scenario, because you can use any one you want. But what are you thinking? Explicit correction, recast, clarification request, metalinguistic feedback. Which one of these 6 do you think is most empowering? Elicitation. And you can think about yourself, like as a student now or as a student when you were a kid. Which of these would have been most empowering in terms of the type of correction that's offered?
I would say elicitation.
Oops, let me go to elicitation. So elicitation is when you pause, right?
Yeah.
So why do you say that?
I know sometimes like students could feel overwhelmed when they're like put on the spot to give an answer, but in my case, I feel like it helps me remember because I have to dig back in my memory in order to answer the question and fill in the blanks. So
yeah, it's almost like a fill in the blank form, which what is it called? In ESL, it's called close, CLOZE. When you have those fill in the blank forms, they're like worksheets, and that's a support providing you with like that prompt. So yeah, I could see that being empowering. Thank you. Who said that?
Clarissa.
Clarissa. Okay, Clarissa. Thank you, Clarissa. Any others? Or are there any that you feel are disempowering? Either way. So again, explicit correction, recast, clarification request, metalinguistic feedback, elicitation, and repetition. Any other thoughts? I'm going to be right back. Blow my nose. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm so sorry. I am back. Any thoughts on any of the others? I think that the metalinguistic feedback can also be pretty empowering, but you have to be absolutely sure that the student has the knowledge that you're asking for. So the teacher said, so the student said, she without. And the teacher says, without, what is the verb? Like, especially if you're doing this publicly, you know, and the student hasn't learned about verbs. But if the student has learned about verbs and you're confident that they have a handle on it and this was just a fleeting mistake, then the student does feel empowered because, yes, I know what verbs are and I know that's what's missing. So in the course of a day as a teacher, you're probably going to use all of these methods of feedback, but always think about the consequences and the effectiveness. I used, let's see. Yeah, so with my own kids, I used elicitation a lot. It didn't always work. No, I should say that it did work at that point in time, but sometimes the students or my children would use my elicitation as a crutch. In other words, they expected the elicitation, so they would just wait for it. But maybe that's because they were my own kids. So this again is in the folder for this week if you ever need to use it. Okay. So early on in the course, we talked about the many different methods and approaches to teaching English, right? Everything from grammar translation method to what else? Can you remember any of the others?
Silent method.
Yes, that one always stands out because it's kind of weird.
Yeah, because it's weird. I remember it.
The silent method, the direct approach, and on and on. But now that we're talking about like language hierarchy and the importance of feeling empowered, there's an approach that I had not talked about, and it's called the participatory approach. It's seen as political. It's not really political. It's just an approach that allows the students to have voice. So what can teachers do about the politics of language? They can develop an awareness of political issues around the use of language, and you're doing that right now. And you can raise awareness of social injustice and integrate it into the curriculum. How? Several different ways. You can talk about not only literacy, but literacies, plural. As a plural, communicating that learning English means more than the ability to read in English. Students need to access the norms, the grammar, the vocabularies used by those in power. So, are you literate or are you really literate? Right? Do you have all the literacies under your belt to go forth and be successful? Okay, number 2, plurilingualism and multi-competence. Teachers can foster positive attitudes towards all languages. All language learning should be additive and not subtractive, okay? Still in 2021, not all teachers know this, okay? So we can celebrate those students who have multiple languages, and having a couple languages under your belt, we know for a fact that those students do better on the SAT, even if English was not their first language. If they knew a couple other languages or even one other language before they learned English as a young child, they will do better on the SAT on average. I'm talking about in the verbal section, the writing section, okay? Celebrate it. Number 3, non-native speakers as teachers. It makes so much sense, okay? Non-native speakers as ESL teachers make some of the best ESL teachers. But in many corners of our field, people don't realize that. And there are still some countries, 2 or 3 countries, that prefer not to have non-native English speakers as teachers of English. And they will put that in their advertising. Some language education programs prefer to hire native speakers. However, non-native speakers bring many strengths. What do you think? Why is that? Why do you think they might bring many strengths?
They might use more proper English.
You mean like standard English?
Yes.
Okay, you mean because they were taught it like later on and held on to it?
Yeah.
Okay, that might be. Maybe, maybe not. Could be. What else? Why might a non-native English speaker, someone who had Arabic as a first language, or Mandarin Chinese, or Portuguese, or Spanish, why would they have particular strengths as an ESL teacher?
Because they understand the struggles.
Yeah.
Ah.
They would know what the students are going through, so they're more likely to relate to them and have ways to help them.
Yes. Not always, but lots of times they're very resourceful and they've been through it. They've taken ESL classes, whether that was when they were very young or as teenagers or young adults, but they can empathize. They might understand before the student understands what's going on. So luckily, we don't have that ideology here in the United States. We know that having non-native English speakers as ESL teachers is a good thing, not a bad thing. Okay. There are some countries, a couple of Asian countries that have not caught up to the rest of the world in that. So not only are there some countries that require you to be a native English speaker, but they also want you to look American. What does that mean? So there's these stereotypes about who speaks well. Okay, number 4, hidden curriculum. A teacher must be aware of what is being taught and learned that is not explicit. This has to do with the physical arrangement of the textbook or workbook. Has to do with your ability to skip sections and activities that might be harmful to your student or are not relevant. It has to do with not teaching informal register. So there are some pieces of curriculum, some curriculum out there that it kind of takes you down the path of teaching only formal English and not informal, casual register. Well, this is odd because when we speak every day to the people we know and even to the people we don't know, we tend to speak informally. So what is the hidden curriculum? Like, are you using an ESL book that is focusing on hygiene? I've seen those. Hygiene is not empowering. People tend to already know about hygiene. So the hidden curriculum, asking questions about why things are ordered in the way they are, etc. Okay. Find out what the students think about English in the first place, right? what is their opinion of the people who speak English fluently? That may impact them as well. And the participatory approach, and I think, yeah, I already mentioned this, but I'll read it. One response to the politics of language teaching begins with content that is meaningful to students. However, what makes this different from content-based instruction is that the topics are not subject matter based. Instead, the topics grow from issues of concern to students. Isn't that beautiful? So the students are really creating the curriculum. A lot of ESL programs are community-based, and if people are having issues in their community, they can talk about those issues, and you can create a curriculum around those issues, okay? This curriculum, this approach, the participatory approach, creates a power dynamic, which is beautiful. I'm gonna let you guys out early because we have that luxury now in week 10. I'm gonna let you out 10 minutes early, and I'm going to continue to talk about the participatory approach when we meet on Thursday. Can you see this slide?
No.
What? How did I do this? Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought you would see everything.
No.
Oh, and no one said anything. So you could see me?
Yes.
What? Oh my goodness. Okay, this is what, but you were able to see when I was talking about the different types of error correction?
Yes.
Okay. Good.
Yeah, earlier we were seeing them.
Oh, okay. So I'm sorry. So everything I was talking about is on the PowerPoint, so you can go back and look as well. Okay. Are there any questions, concerns, or anything? Okay. All right. So you're free to go until next time. Reach out if you have any questions, okay?
Yeah, can I talk to you after everybody leaves?
Oh,
Just
sure.
for 2 minutes.
Oh, no
or 1
problem.
minute.
Okay, no problem.
Thank you.
Professor.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. See you
Bye-bye.
Thursday.
See you Thursday.
Bye-bye.
Yeah,
Okay.
let's
Bye,
just
Aya.
yeah, just to stop the recording.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,